Miracles Among the Rubble by Carol Gray. Chapter 14, Evidence of Hope. It was along a long straight road between Rovanska and Zadar, part of the beautiful Dalmatian coast, that I faced some of my greatest challenges and had some of my most rewarding experiences. At this time, the road was the only surviving thoroughfare between Bosnia and Croatia. The Serbians, keen to isolate Bosnia, fought constantly in this area to close the road and occupy many of the coastal villages around it. Daylight was the only time we travelled because of the heavy gunfire that came after dusk. Passing the army barricade was always unnerving, as they would stop us at gunpoint to check our cargo. Once given the all clear, they would send us on our way with instructions on where not to go, followed by a flowing dramatic sign of the cross that left us with no doubt that this was not a route to be trifled with. Our trucks, decorated with a large red heart, would gently ease out into the potholed road, dodging the tree stumps and shell holes as we travelled. We would call into the little communities of makeshift wood and cardboard homes and give out our renowned food parcels and warm blankets. In one community, driving down a particular mud road, I came upon a hastily made wooden lean-to hut. Pulling up nearby, I followed the sound of sobs, which told me someone was in distress. Armed with a blanket and a food parcel, I tapped gently on the door. The silence spoke volumes. The occupier, obviously a woman, was too afraid to answer the door. I gently spoke in English, so she would realize I was not a threat, nor would I want to harm her. The door opened very slightly, and an eye looked at me through the crack. I placed the food parcel by the door with the blanket and returned to the truck to fetch some fruit and bread. As I returned to her home bearing my gifts, the door opened and a slim and fearful lady emerged, her dark brown eyes swollen from weeping and sunken through weariness and pain. Struggling to find the right words to say, I reached down to pick up the parcel and blanket to give them to her. The dark, wearied eyes looked at me questioningly. All I could think to say, as I pointed to the blanket and food, was "Volimte, we love you," hoping that she would understand that I had come in peace and wished only to be of help. A large teardrop fell from her cheek. With a thankful heart, I realized she had understood. As I moved towards her, she fell into my arms and sobbed, telling me of the tragedy that had befallen her. I didn't understand. How could I? But I recognized her need. My eyes surveyed her home. It was a tiny, dark and damp makeshift shed, perhaps measuring just 6 foot by 5 foot. On the ground lay an old black polythene bin bag that she slept on. The only other sign of occupation was a stone slab in the corner. At some time, a twig fire had burned there with a battered and worn bean can as her only cooking utensil. In silence, I witnessed her desperate need, her cold and empty world. How long ago was it since she had eaten or drunk some clean water? How had she survived the freezing nights without cover or warmth? Her dirt-ingrained hands and face, her feet without shoes, and her unsuitable clothing that told me that all that she possessed in life resided within the walls of her flimsy hut. I thought desperately of ways I could help. Time was running out. There were hundreds more like her further down the road, and no doubt they would be just as needy and just as heartbreaking. Looking at her, vulnerable, lonely, hungry and afraid, I briskly went to work. A plastic-covered medical mattress resided in my truck. I had slept on it the previous night. It would be comfortable and waterproof. After placing a plastic sheet on the floor with the mattress on top and 2 warm blankets on the mattress, I knew she would be warm tonight. I then set her up with a spare camping stove I had with an extra canister that would last until I came again in 6 weeks' time with more gas fillers. In her food parcel she had fish, meat, soup and vegetables. Adding extra soup to her store, I realized she would need a tin opener and matches. I placed the matches in a damp-proof bag to keep them dry. I also added 2 boxes of candles, some warm clothes, a pair of boots and a lovely cuddly teddy bear to keep her company. I had taken just 15 minutes to equip her home and bring a smile to her lips. When love and goodness touch the most tender places of our hearts, we will find the answers we seek and the ability to accomplish them. There are evidences of hope all around us if we take the time to recognize them and allow them to influence us for good and bless our lives with peace and the desire to be of use. Over the following 2 years, I visited her every 6 to 8 weeks with food and the necessities she needed. Whenever I could give it, I gave her a little spare cash to begin rebuilding her home and life. During those 2 years, she found the will and the ability to build herself, almost single-handed, a small new home. It was a beautiful home where she would be safe and warm. With the gardening tools and vegetable seeds we bought for her, she grew produce to keep her and the neighbours alive and healthy. On my last visit, our gifts of a food parcel and fresh vegetables were kindly and affectionately refused. She pulled me towards the tiny shed that had once been her home. It had been extended to take in all the wonderful produce she had grown from the packets of seeds we had left. "No more, I am full," she said in the broken English she had learned. "Thank you, you will give your gifts of love elsewhere." I looked at her face and hands. She had been tending her garden full to overflowing with produce, grown from the seeds collected from the previous original produce. In amazement, I surveyed her success. All those months ago, I had left her just 20 packets of assorted vegetable seeds, a garden fork, a spade, a hoe, a bucket, and a garden hose to attach to her kitchen tap. The tiny chickens I had left her were now big and strong, trotting freely around the garden. They were happy and laying well. Her face and hands? Yes, they were still ingrained with soil and grime, but it was the grime of honest and joyous labour. The tears that flowed that day were mine. She was the one to put her arms around me and whisper, "Ya vas volim, voilà, I love you, thank you."